Today we're going to deviate from the usual CB radio. Just as we did that record player, this is an HMV Stereomaster 2419, which is coming for service. Now, we don't have any benches in the electronics workshop that accommodate radiograms, and we don't have any benches clear in our church organ restoration workshop at this point, because we're undergoing some restoration work on some of the work jobs that are in here. I've dug the service manual out for the HMV 2419. And so this is coming from a customer, and it's got a seized turntable, which isn't unusual with this BSR type of unit, and it's also got, I understand, a problem with the amplifier only working on one channel. So we're going to go through that. I have a small collection of HMV Stereomasters. They're quite close to my heart. We used to run a television and video business in Yorkshire, and HMV was one of the brands we did, and I always liked these products immensely, and they weren't cheap at the time. So I'm just going to establish a shop, we're just going to nip into the organ workshop, and I'll just show you some of the things which are going on in there. Okay, if you can hear me over the wind, this is C-solid. This is a BSR mechanism. We've transported it with the transit screws screwed anti-clockwise, so it's in the lockdown. It's not on its springs. You always transport record turntables locked down, and you always make sure the pickup arm is locked into its rest, because you don't want that wiggling around all over and wrecking the stylus and cartridge. So the first thing we've got to do is to unseize this. We've got to get that centre spindle out. There's always a temptation to switch these things on. You know, you buy them from the charity shop, you buy them from eBay. There's no point switching it on to see what it does, because it isn't going to work. So you may as well go through the correct procedure, and we're going to start by freeing off this centre spindle. We have got to get that centre spindle out. Now, I'm hoping we won't have to get the hairdryer onto it, and you've got to be mindful that these platters are often plastic, and so you can't be getting the industrial heat gun on it, and you've got to be very careful. So what we're going to do is, I have got to get that centre spindle out. So we're going to put some lubrication down there, and we're going to come back to it when it's freed off enough to pull. So I've taken immediately, we've taken this centre out. There's a false centre. We just need to pull that out, and that gets to the circlip underneath. But first of all, we're going to pull that spindle out. This still has the protective plastic on, which went on in 1971 to 1973 when these were actually in production. So that's incredible that that's still on there. I'll draw the customer's attention to that, because it looked pretty shiny when that's removed. So I have been able to get the spindle out. I actually just put WD-40 on that, and with some long nose pliers I was able to ease that out quite safely, and that's now out. So we're now left with the hole. Now, as I say, this is C-solid. What we need to do is to remove this circlip. I haven't got any circlip pliers. It's just a matter of slipping a screwdriver in the circlip, popping the circlip out, job done. We're still just about C-solid. I'm not going to pull on it. There's only one way to do this, and that's to get your trusty soldering iron and plonk it down the hole. That will heat up the grease, which is solidified, and hopefully the platter will remove. So we're just going to leave that about 3 minutes, and then we'll put the camera back on to record. Just thinking again about the outside benches we have here, you think, why do they have outside benches? And the reason is some of the organ parts are so bulky, and it's so nice out here in the middle of nowhere that we often do things like the big pedal pipes, which are 16 foot long, on these outside benches, and we can do the cleaning of the pipes, and sometimes they need repainting, so all that can be done outside. So we have these benches, we've got 4 of these benches, and it just seems an ideal opportunity to do a radiogram, and it's good for lighting for the video. So we've applied heat now for about 10 minutes. It was quite a stiff one, and we've been able to remove the platter. It's a metal one on this. And it's all caused by this grease inside and outside, which is all just turned to toffee after all these years. So we're going to strip this down a bit further. It's all done from the top. We can take that circlip out of the auto mechanism. A lot of the time these will work on manual and aren't totally seized, but the auto mechanism won't work. So take that circlip off. And then this cam we'll remove. Sometimes we have to apply heat to the cam. I can't be bothered to go and find a hairdryer, so we're just doing it with the soldering iron again. And whilst we do that, whilst that just warms up, we're going to take the idler, because it's idler driven and not belt drive, the idler driven. And that idler engages with the rim. So we're just going to pop the circlip off that, which we've done. Pull that, but be mindful that there is a fibre washer, and there's a fibre washer underneath, which is still there. When we can get it off, that is. So we've stripped that off, and what we're going to do is to just clean that and then lubricate it with oil, and we'll use the 3-in-1 standard household oil. I'm first going to clean it with a bit of kitchen roll with isopropyl alcohol. So we'll just put a bit of that on the roll, and we'll just clean that off. So certainly a bit of muck on there. But I said that idler wasn't stuck. It can be stuck, it wasn't on this particular one. And as far as the oil goes, I'm just going to get another piece of paper towel. We're just going to spray a bit onto the paper towel and just put that very carefully onto that spindle. What we've got to be very careful not to do is to get any oil or grease on the motor pulley there. In fact, what we're going to do is, once again with the isopropyl alcohol, we'll just make sure that is clean, because that's what the idler is engaging on, and it's stepped for the different speeds. On this one it's 33, 45 and 78. And again we've got some muck off that. So we may as well reassemble the idler. So we'll put the fibre washer on. I'm just going to spray a bit of oil onto that centre section. I should have cleaned this with the isopropyl alcohol first, but I will do a really good do when we put it back together. And the top washer, and the circlip, which I should be able to do with my fingers, which I can. And then once again with that isopropyl alcohol, just going to make sure that's absolutely clean, there's no residue off my fingers. Just go around, make sure that's really clean. So the soldering iron has now been removed, and it's heated the grease enough to remove this auto cam, and that just pulls off the spindle. And underneath there we can get to that bearing, and I'm just going to clean that grease off that spindle just off camera. Now, rather than put grease on, I'm going to just use the thin household oil once again. Don't be tempted to use cooking oil. It might work this week, but I don't think it'll work next week when you come to it, and then you'll be frustrated that you've got to strip it down again. And this auto mechanism cam, we'll just get rid of some of the grease off that, which caused it to be all nasty and sticky. Now, the underside of this cam is what makes the auto return work, and again we've got the cloth with the isopropyl alcohol. Get rid of that, Now you can put a thin grease on, we do have a thin grease here, but once again I'm going to just use the oil. But first of all we need to strip this down. This is the trigger for the auto stop mechanism, and it's supposed to be really nice and loose. Well, it isn't, it's as solid as anything. What happens if you don't clean this and this is stiff, as the arm moves onto the record and gets towards the end of the record, it will suddenly go 2/3 of the way into the record and it'll suddenly start jumping. And that's because the arm can't move any further because it's been restricted by this auto stop. So you often come across that fault, and it's because of this. So we're just going to strip down. Again, we can take that circlip off. And take this mechanism top off. It's very stiff in the spindle, and it's the same problem. So once again, we're going to clean with the isopropyl alcohol. We're going to clean that. And off camera, we're going to do the same with here. So we're going to apply the oil between those two sections and make sure those two leaves are absolutely nice and free. So we've already cleaned all the old grease out of there, and I can actually rattle that, and it does indeed rattle. And you can see the difference, how that is, it'll rattle around, and that's how it should be. Pop the circlip back on there, and that's that done. We're going to apply the oil onto the centre bearing rather than the grease, and having cleaned the top washer, pop that back on. What I'm now going to do is to, I don't know whether you can still get those pipe cleaners, but what we're going to do is just to twist this round and clean out that grease out of the centre section. So having put the washer back, just going to put some of the oil onto the cloth, put some on that centre spindle, and the same onto that one there. I'm going to run it around the inside of that track. And what we now have to do, put a bit of oil again from the cloth onto that centre. We've got a bit of oil on that centre there, and we now need to get this back into the track. Sometimes it can be a bit difficult and sometimes not. Now that's gone in together fine. And then all we need to do is to pop the top circlip back onto it. So whilst the record deck's been stripped down, we've taken the opportunity to give it a quick spray with our foam cleanser. And I will just mention that in this clip, just there, you've got that short spindle for manual use instead of the long spindle which was in for the auto changer. So you should have both spindles when you have a record deck like this. Now what we're going to do is put the platter on. Now my assistant's just cleaned the outer of this, and it's still got the plastic on that, so that's nice. Just make sure we've got a little bit of oil on that, and hopefully this will drop back on just like that, and it actually spins. Now the temptation is to switch it on, and what we'll just do is to find the mains lead. So we're in the UK, so we've got a UK plug. I am just going to check this is wired correctly. I did one the other week and there was no earth, so we need to have the cable into the cord grip, which it is. Just check they're tight and the earth is there. See what fuse is fitted. It's fitted with a 13 amp fuse, which is wrong. We're going to change that, but not at this moment. That'll be having a 3 amp fuse fitted. And what we're now going to do is to plug it in, and as long as there isn't a major amplifier fault, I just want to run up this turntable and just see whether we've got it right, which hopefully we have. So I've got the centre spindle. This is just as it's come out. So once again, I'm going to clean the old grease and muck off it. And try not to leave bits of paper behind. Just put a spray of oil on it, which I'm going to do off camera because I don't want it to be in the record compartment. And again, that rattles, you know, the mechanism inside there rattles. So hopefully we can pop that back in. I haven't put the circlip back in yet. You'll feel where that goes. There's a locating spigot kind of arrangement. And what we're just going to do now is do a quick test. I've just undo these transit screws, so we've got the mechanism on its springs, and then we'll find some dreadful record. And I'm not expecting this to work on one channel because the customer says so, and we haven't started on the amplifier yet. You also notice, I don't know whether it's in camera shot, but the headphone socket has been pushed inside. So I don't know what we're going to be able to do about that, but we'll come to that. So what we're going to now do is switch the unit on. We're in the gram mode, and I will just put it to start, which is the manual. That's at 33. That's 45. We do have a tester for these speeds, which consists of a paper pattern which goes on this platter, and when looked at under a fluorescent or a neon light, will give a stroboscopic effect when your speed is correct. The speed won't be wrong if it's been lubricated correctly, because it's a mains synchronous motor. So the frequency of the AC current in the UK is 50 Hertz, and so it's precisely 50 Hertz, so it's calculated like that. Now we need to check the pressure. I'll stop that. And the pressure is how heavy that stylus is, subject to there being a stylus in there. There is. According to the service manual, it needs to be around about 2.5 to 3 grams. This is a digital tester. You can get those balance ones as well. So I'll switch that on. Now I don't know whether we can see on camera what that reads. It actually reads 3.6, which isn't stupidly out. And on this mechanism, it's a matter of it just being that wheel at the back. So we'll drop it to 3. It says 2.76, that's fine. The anti-skate control needs to be at the corresponding, and it already is at 3. So the anti-skate control needs to match what the pressure is. So if we've got that at 3, that needs to be at 3. If we've got that at 2, that needs to be at 2, and so on. So 2.77 on our gauge, says 3 on there. Well, you know, 2.85, that's fine. So put that in its rest position. I've now put the circlip back because we've seen it running, but when I feel the arm as I moved it onto the pressure gauge, it's very stiff. So I think we just do need to lubricate underneath. It's not often you do need to lubricate underneath, but we do on this occasion. Sometimes these are jammed and won't go into the start position because the mechanism underneath is also needing lubrication. So we're going to turn this on its side and we'll take the bottom off. I think there's 16 screws, so we'll just pause the camera. So underneath the Stereomaster, and all the 10 models are the same, especially when I'm talking about the radio bit, because half of them have radios and half of them don't. You've got the model number underneath. People go, oh, I don't know what model it is. Well, it's underneath. You've also got the internal dipole aerial, which is plugged into that socket there. You just need to unplug that. So if you're in a poor reception area, you can put an external aerial into there for the FM radio. So having got it on its side, where the arm is, you can see as I move the arm from the outside, it's pivoted there. I'm just going to put some oil on there. And some of these linkages, it's worth feeling what that grease is like, and probably either adding a bit more grease, taking that off, or whatever as you feel. So that, we've just done that, feels absolutely normal as it should be. Now I don't know whether we can see on the camera down as far as the motor. So looking at the service manual, according to this, it's supposed to be a BSR C142 auto changer, and it's supposed to be fitted with a Sonotone 3509 cartridge. My assistant here thought it was a 155, did you say? Yes, he's nodding, good. So perhaps this is later production. It's pretty immaculate. For test purposes, I'm plugging the dipole aerial back in. You can see this is the amplifier chassis. Very reliable. It's got a built-in stereo decoder. This was also appeared as a tuner amplifier, not in a radiogram, but as a tuner amplifier. And they are very reliable, but even on this later model, there can be capacitor problems at this age. You'll notice that, I think we can see that on camera, the mains transformer here at the bottom is unshrouded, so by today's standards that wouldn't be really permitted. So you've got live mains, so do make sure you've got it unplugged. Now we're going to be taking the chassis out on the next video and just going through a few things on that. What we're going to do next is we're going to take the bottom speaker enclosure. These are sealed speaker enclosures, and they must never be run at high volume with the lids off, because they're high compliance speakers and you'll end up wrecking them. So we're just going to pause the video and take one of the speaker enclosures off. So having taken the speaker bottom off on the left hand channel, it exposes the speaker. We've got the woofer in the side, we've got the tweeter at the front. Now these are the only Stereomaster that appear to be fitted with loudspeakers that have got a foam surround, and it has a tendency to rot. Now I don't know whether we can see that, but this one has rotted. This speaker needs replacing. There's no messing about. I've just touched it with a screwdriver, and I hope the customer's looking at this, because the speaker is now wrecked. They need replacing, and that will be what we'll be doing. They're not expensive, they're about £12 each, but we can't kind of get quite the right impedance. These are 10 ohms, and if I recall, we have to buy 8 ohms. We will put a series resistor in so that it doesn't upset the amplifier. So that is it at the moment. I'm going to put it back on and we'll just see whether that auto changer works. We're not listening to what it sounds like because we know the speakers are no good, and we don't know what the amplifier's like either, but I just want to watch the record drop and see whether it's in the correct position. So we've dug a record out from, I bought 1,000 records for £1 off eBay, and we went a long way to collect them, probably about 150 miles, and they're all worth absolutely nothing. But the great thing is they're useful for doing tests with. So we're going to just make sure that it's in 12-inch mode, which it is. We're going to just put this record on and see whether it sets down. I haven't cleaned it, haven't touched it, just as it's come. I'm just going to see if this auto mechanism is working. Oh, it's set down in the correct place, so there we go. I do have some sound, but we will be going through the amplifier. Yeah, it seems to be working on both channels, but it's a matter of addressing those speakers, so we'll get those ordered. What I didn't do is to check the stylus, which was very remiss of me. Must be so eager in that part. We'll just do the stylus. Right, pop that off. We'll get the stylus out. Can be a bit awkward. There we have the stylus. And somewhere on here we have the stylus microscope. So that's the stylus microscope, and these are readily available off eBay, so I'm just going to look at that stylus and see what it's like. So my service manual says the cartridge is a Sonotone 3509. When I actually look at it, it's a SC12H, is it? So the stylus for that is the single-sided ST21. So it's not a turnover one. There will be a turnover stylus you can fit and that, but I haven't got that cross-reference information in front of me. The stylus looks like it's serviceable under the microscope. I'm going to give it a clean with the isopropyl alcohol and a brush and put it back in, but I think we'll order a new one before sending this back to the customer. They're not that expensive, they're about £6.99. So what I know I need to do with this is to order a pair of new woofer speakers. They're not expensive from our wholesalers, I think they're about £12 each. And that and a bit of service work on the amplifier will be the subject of the next video.